My name is Kendra Smith. I am 34 years old, and my life is measured out by the precise lines of financial reports in a Nevada office where I work as an analyst. Numbers are my element. They are predictable and obedient to logic. But there was another incalculable variable in my life, my younger sister, Abby. She was 31, and her existence seemed the complete opposite of mine. Married to a good-natured but careless Jacob, two perpetually laughing children, perpetual chaos, and, most surprising of all, the unwavering approval of our parents. They looked at her through a lens of total forgiveness, as if she were a crystal vase incapable of a wrong deed, while I remained a sturdy, functional vessel whose reliability was taken for granted and never admired. Several years ago, I did something I was truly proud of. Without entrusting my fate to the whims of emotion, I methodically, with ascetic discipline, saved every penny I could scrape from my salary. The result of this labor was a lakeside house at Lake Tahoe. It wasn't huge or luxurious, but it was mine, a quiet refuge, earned through hardship and deserved. I filled it with my breath, walls the color of calm sand, a gorgeous living room sofa that cost 3 months of my salary, but embodied my taste and my right to beauty. And on the second floor, a studio, a bright room with a north-facing window where I could paint with watercolors and simply breathe, looking at the water. That house was my fortress, a sanctuary from the suffocation of office walls, a place to recharge when the world demanded too much. My parents lived nearby, in Reno, and Abby with her family was crammed into a rental on the other side of town. We saw each other occasionally, mostly on holidays, around a set table where an illusion of idyll reigned. Everything was fine, or at least that's what I thought, until that Tuesday morning when the phone rang. My sister's name glowed on the screen. "Hey, Kendra," her voice sounded, and that nickname, which I never liked, stung me. "I have news. Tomorrow we're moving into your house at Lake Tahoe." I nearly dropped my coffee cup, the thick, dark liquid sloshing dangerously close to the rim. "What?" I squeezed out, feeling the floor vanish from under my feet. "Yeah, the rent here became unbearable," she continued with the same nonchalance she might use to announce a new curtain fabric. "We can't manage anymore, so we're moving in with you. It's logical, right? You hardly use it." My brain, accustomed to analysis and structure, spun wildly, trying to process this sudden upheaval of reality. "Abby, you can't just move into my house," I said, vainly trying to keep my voice firm. "It's my house." "Oh, and by the way," she went on, as if she hadn't heard a word, "I've already made a few updates. The wallpaper in the dining room was impossibly boring, so I ordered new ones, with a silvery metallic sheen. Looks amazing. And that sofa of yours in the living room, I had it reupholstered. It's much better now. Oh, and I need you to transfer $4,200 to the contractors. They did excellent work." I had to sit down. I sank onto the nearest chair, feeling my legs give way. "Abby, what are you even talking about?" I whispered, and a ringing silence filled my ears. "Who gave you permission to do all this?" "Permission?" She laughed, and the sound was like a slap. "Kendra, don't be dramatic. Dad gave me the spare key. Mom and Dad think it's a great idea. We're family. You have to help us." And then she hung up, just like that. I sat, staring at the darkened screen of my smartphone, watching my fingers tremble finely. The tremor rose from my fingertips upwards, filling my whole body with a cold, silent rage. I immediately dialed my mother's number. "Mom, are you aware that Abby is planning to move into my house?" I asked, my voice betraying me with a tremble. "Oh, yes, dear," Mom replied in that honeyed, placating tone she used when she wanted to smooth over any conflict, usually at my expense. "She told us all about it. It really is the best solution. Their rent is so high, and your house sits empty most of the time. It's wasteful." "It's my house, Mom," I repeated, feeling the words lose their weight in this atmosphere of universal approval. "I bought it with my own money." "Well, yes, but shouldn't family help family?" she persisted. "You know how hard it is for Abby with 2 little ones, and that house is so big for one person who only visits occasionally. She hired contractors, changed the wallpaper and the sofa. She's just trying to make it cozy for the kids. You should see it. It looks wonderful. Abby has such great taste." I closed my eyes, tasting the familiar, age-old bitterness. This wasn't new. The same play, where I played the part of the accommodating older sister, had been running all my life. I saw myself at 17 again, as Abby, beaming with delight, took my dangling earrings, a gift from our grandmother, and returned them with a stone missing. "You have to forgive her, Kendra. She didn't mean it," Mom said, patting my hand. I remembered Abby persuading me to lend her my car for the weekend and returning it 3 months later with a huge scar-like dent on the side. "It was just an accident. Don't make a tragedy out of it," my father grumbled, avoiding my gaze. Love, that word was always spoken in her direction, while I was handed the labels reasonable and understanding. I remembered her, radiant, putting on my favorite dress, the color of a faded rose, and returning it with a crimson wine stain, like blood. They bought her a new outfit and told me the dress was out of fashion anyway. "Mom, this is different. This is my house," I said, and my own voice sounded weak and foreign. "Kendra, don't be selfish. Abby needs this." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. My whole body burned with anger. Every cell felt filled with molten lead. I took a deep breath and dialed Abby's number again. This time I turned on the voice recorder on my phone. A cold premonition told me I would need proof of this conversation. "Did you talk to Mom?" Abby asked immediately, as if we were just continuing a pleasant chat. "Yes. And my answer is no, you cannot move into my house." "Too late. Everything's already packed. The wallpaper is up, the sofa is ready, we're moving tomorrow, and you owe me $4,200. "I don't owe you anything. Get out of my house." "It's happening, whether you like it or not. Send me the money." And again, the short beeps in my ear. I grabbed my car keys. I needed to see it with my own eyes. The drive from Reno to Lake Tahoe took about an hour, but I noticed neither the smooth turns of the road, nor the majestic pines, nor the first piercing view of the turquoise water surface. The entire way, I was haunted by the same question, tapping a rhythm in my temples. How dare she? How could my parents allow this? I arrived at the house in the evening. The sun, dipping towards the horizon, ignited crimson reflections in the lake's windows. The first thing I noticed was the new metallic sheen blinds on the windows, blinds I hadn't bought. I opened the front door with my key. Inside, a ringing silence reigned. They must have gone to town for their things. I entered, and nausea washed over me. My beautiful, calm beige walls in the dining room were gone. Their place was taken by awful, cold, silvery wallpaper with a metallic gleam, as if transported from a cheap nightclub. In the kitchen, someone had installed a cheap, rickety wine rack. I saw the rough, torn holes in the wall where it had been screwed in. The living room was even worse. My gorgeous sofa, my cherished acquisition, an object of pride and comfort, had been reupholstered in a fabric with a loud, tasteless pattern. It looked like worn-out furniture from a roadside motel, having lost any hint of elegance. I went up the stairs, and each step echoed with pain in my soul. My studio, the calm white walls I had so carefully painted, striving for a perfect matte finish, were now a bright yellow. Not a soft yellow, but a sickly, garish yellow, like a chick's plumage. I felt tears welling up, but held them back, clenching my fists. And then my gaze fell on a corner of the room, on a small, inconspicuous surveillance camera. I had completely forgotten about them. 4 months ago, giving into a wave of anxiety, I had installed 6 cameras throughout the house for security. They automatically recorded and saved everything to the cloud. I took out my phone, my hands shaking as I opened the security app. Scrolling through the recordings, my heart sinking, I found the date I needed. 10 days ago. The video showed Abby. She approached my front door with such casual confidence, as if she were the full-fledged mistress here. Easily opened the door with the key. Later, contractors followed her in carrying rolls of that awful wallpaper and bundles of fabric. I turned up the volume. "I want the dining room in silver," Abby was saying, gesturing around the room. "A modern style. And this sofa needs a completely new cover. Something colorful, cheerful." In another video, from the living room camera, she was talking on the phone, pacing the room with a cup of my coffee in her hand. I recognized my father's low, calming voice coming from her phone's speaker. "Dad, you should see this place," Abby was saying, and her voice held a triumphant tenderness. "When we move in, it will be ours. Kendra is going to be so shocked." She laughed, a light, carefree laugh that grated on my ears like glass. She was laughing as she talked about stealing my house, my painstakingly created paradise. In one of the subsequent recordings, Jacob flashed across the frame. He stood in the doorway, his kind face distorted with doubt. "Abby, are you sure?" he asked quietly. "Did Kendra really agree?" "Don't worry," she brushed him off, not even turning around. "Mom and Dad are on our side. She'll get over it. She always gets over everything." I took dozens of photos, capturing every ruined corner, every act of vandalism they called improvement. I saved all the surveillance videos in 3 different places, like precious evidence that had already become my weapon. I carefully transferred the recording of that phone call with Abby, where she, with icy calm, demanded the money. Then I locked the house, turning the key with the feeling that I was locking not just a door, but a whole chapter of my life, and drove back to Reno. The next morning, I sat in a deep leather chair opposite Mr. Harris in his stern, dark-toned office in downtown Reno. He was a lawyer recommended by colleagues who had seen my distressed state. "Tell me what happened," he said, pulling out a desk drawer and taking out a notepad. I silently placed my folder in front of him. I showed him everything. Photos of my ruined house, where tastelessness triumphed over harmony. Video recordings from the cameras showing Abby, like the rightful owner, letting in contractors and giving them instructions. I played the recording where her voice, cold and demanding, insisted on the transfer of $4,200. He watched carefully the video where Abby was talking to my father. When her words, "When we move in, it will be ours," came from the speaker, his eyebrows rose. "Miss Smith, this is serious," he stated, putting the phone aside. He said, "What your sister has done amounts to several crimes. Breaking and entering, for starters. She entered your private property without any permission. Vandalism, as she intentionally damaged your property. And this demand for money, it could be construed as attempted extortion." "What are my options?" I asked, and my voice sounded steadier than I expected. "You have 2 main paths. The first is a civil lawsuit. We will demand reimbursement for the costs of restoring the house to its original condition, as well as compensation for emotional distress and all associated costs. The second option. We file a civil suit and simultaneously initiate a criminal case. This involves going to the police." I didn't even hesitate. "The second one. I want criminal charges." Mr. Harris nodded slowly, his gaze serious. "That is a harsher path. Your sister could get a criminal record. Are you sure?" "I am sure that she has gotten away with everything her whole life," I replied, looking him straight in the eye. "Not this time." "All right, then. I will prepare a formal claim for damages and send it to your sister by registered mail. That is the first formal step. Then we will go to the police." I signed the papers, wrote him a check for his retainer, and left the office feeling something I hadn't felt for years in the context of family relations. I felt in control. 4 days passed. I went to work, came home, and waited. I didn't call any of my family members. I didn't react. And then my phone started to blow up. First Abby, 6 calls in an hour. Then a stream of messages. "Call me. We need to talk. This is ridiculous. You're going crazy." I didn't respond. I knew she had received that letter from Mr. Harris. I knew that panic was now gripping her, the kind born from the understanding that this time her actions would not go without consequences. Then my mom's number lit up on my phone. I almost ignored it, but internal curiosity won out. I wanted to hear it. "Kendra, what have you done?" My mother's voice was sharp and trembling with indignation. "Abby got a letter from some lawyer accusing her of breaking and entering and vandalism. This is outrageous." "It's not outrageous, Mom. It's the truth," I said, and my voice sounded surprisingly even and cold, like the surface of the lake on a windless day. "She's your sister." My mother's voice wavered, holding both tears and reproach. "She needed help. You have a big house that sits empty most of the time, and she has 2 children to raise." I took a deep breath, feeling the tight knot of nerves in my chest slowly begin to loosen. "Mom, is there a specific reason for your call?" "Tomorrow," she exhaled, "we are having a family meeting at the house on Lake Tahoe. All of us. We will resolve this like adults, civilized people." "I'll be there," I agreed without hesitation, "but I will bring something with me. Tell Abby this is her last chance. If she takes all her things and gets out of there before I arrive, I will drop the criminal charges. If not, she will face real consequences. Jail, Mom, a criminal record." A heavy, deafening silence hung on the other end of the line, and then there were short beeps. I immediately dialed Mr. Harris's number and described the plan for the upcoming family council in detail. He warned me to be extremely careful and not to agree to any terms without consulting him. The police report has already been filed, he added. The process has started. The next day, I drove slowly along the familiar road to the lake. Approaching the house, I saw my parents' large SUV parked in the driveway. I entered without knocking, turning the key in the lock with a loud, authoritative click. Everyone was already waiting in the living room, seated on that same mutilated sofa. Mom, Dad, Abby, and a slouching Jacob. In the corner of the room were stacked cardboard boxes with their things, a silent testament to the invasion that had begun. "There she is," my father said. His voice, usually warm, was now cold and impersonal. "Sit down. We need to discuss this absurd lawsuit." "There's nothing to discuss," I retorted, remaining standing. "Abby needs to leave. Right now." "We've already moved in," Abby declared, defiantly crossing her arms. "The house is set up for us. We're staying." "Mom said this house belongs to the whole family," my mother whimpered. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. "You can't just kick your own sister out." Slowly, with deliberate theatricality, I took out a sheet of paper folded in 4 from my bag. "This is the deed," I said, unfolding it. "See this name? Kendra Smith. I am the sole owner. Not you, not Dad, not Abby." Abby snorted, and her laugh had a nervous tremor. "That piece of paper means nothing. We live here now. We've redone everything. You can't make us leave." I reached into my bag again and pulled out another document. And this is a copy of the police report. It lists breaking and entering, property damage, and attempted extortion. All charges are criminal. You and Jacob have created serious legal problems for yourselves, and if you don't get out of here right now, I will see this through to the end. A deathly silence fell in the room. Jacob's face turned white. "Abby," he said quietly but clearly, "you told me Kendra agreed. You told me she was fine with it." "She's lying!" Abby shrieked, her bravado beginning to crack. "You're the one who lied," Jacob shouted back, jumping up from the sofa. "I asked you 3 times if you were sure, and you swore your sister was okay with it." They started yelling at each other, their voices merging into a deafening, discordant chorus. Mom burst into tears, accusing me of being a terrible daughter, destroying the family. Dad just shook his head, muttering something about imagined grievances and revenge. And at that moment of chaos, there was a sharp, authoritative knock on the door. I went and opened it. On the doorstep stood 2 police officers in uniform, a man and a woman. "Miss Kendra Smith?" the officer asked, his gaze serious and professional. "We're here regarding the criminal complaint you filed. Is Miss Abby Thompson here?" I'm Abby Thompson," came a trembling, suddenly hoarse voice from behind me. The officer, without taking his stern gaze off her, said, "Miss Thompson, we need you to come with us to the station for questioning regarding charges of breaking and entering and damage to private property." Abby's face, contorted in a grimace of indignation, suddenly flushed, then turned white, as if she had been dipped in ice water. "This is insane!" she exclaimed, and her voice took on hysterical notes. "She's my sister!" "Ma'am," the officer's voice remained steely, "I must insist. All persons present, with the exception of Miss Smith, are to vacate the premises immediately. The belongings you have brought here will remain. They will be seized as evidence." A torturous process of evacuation began, full of silent reproach. Mom, sobbing, wiped her face with a handkerchief. Dad was shouting something about a destroyed family, his words lost in the general chaos. Jacob stood with his head bowed, as if wishing the earth would swallow him. Abby, whom the officers were leading away by the arms, turned and hissed something in my direction, inarticulate, full of malice and promises of revenge. I watched this, standing on the threshold of my own house, and felt not relief, but an icy, scorched desert calm. The next day, back in my Reno apartment, I called Mr. Harris. "Can I start the repairs now?" I asked, and an unfamiliar note of pleading sounded in my voice. "I want to get rid of that awful wallpaper and get my sofa back." "Do not touch anything yet," he replied categorically. "The initial state of the damage is our strongest card. For the court, the house must remain in the condition your sister left it. I understand it's difficult, but you will have to wait." I felt bitter disappointment. Every time the image of those silver walls and the poisonous yellow studio appeared in my mind's eye, I felt physically ill. But I understood. The evidence was more valuable than my feelings. And I waited. The days passed, merging into a monotonous succession of workdays. I ignored my parents' persistent calls and didn't go to the lake, unable to look at the desecrated sanctuary. Mr. Harris kept me updated. Abby had hired a lawyer, and my parents, quite predictably, were helping her pay for his services. Of course, they always helped Abby. 3 months later, the trial took place. Dressed in a strict business suit, I met Mr. Harris at the courthouse. My parents were already sitting in the room, behind Abby, their backs rigid with condemnation. Jacob wasn't with them. I later found out he had filed for divorce, using the criminal case against his wife as one of the grounds for seeking full custody of the children. Smart man, he had finally seen the light. The trial began. Abby's lawyer tried to present it all as an unfortunate family misunderstanding. He argued that his client sincerely believed she had a right to act as she did since her parents had provided the key. He said she was only trying to improve the house, and the requested money was a reasonable reimbursement for expenses already incurred. Then Abby herself took the stand. She cried, spoke of betrayal, of how family should be a support. She couldn't believe her own sister was treating her so cruelly. My parents nodded, and their reproachful gazes stabbed into me like daggers. Then it was Mr. Harris's turn. A large monitor was set up in the room. "I would like to present to the court the recordings from Miss Smith's surveillance system," he declared. On the screen, the familiar scenes unfolded one after another. There was Abby confidently opening the door with my key. There she was, gesticulating, giving orders to the workers. There she was with a coffee cup, surveying the premises. And then the main part played, her conversation with my father. Her voice, clear and self-assured, filled the courtroom. "Dad, you should see this place. Kendra is going to be so shocked. When we move in, it will be ours." A deathly silence fell in the room. Abby shrank in her seat, her face flushed with shame. Her lawyer wearily rubbed the bridge of his nose. My mother stopped nodding, frozen in shock. "When we move in, the house will be ours," Mr. Harris repeated, looking around the room. "Not visit, not borrow, precisely move in." Mrs. Thompson intended to permanently appropriate her sister's property, acting with full awareness of her wrongful actions. Then Mr. Harris played the audio recording of our phone conversation. Through the headset set up in the courtroom, Abby's voice sounded, not broken and repentant, but demanding and arrogant, the very one that had turned my soul inside out that fateful morning. "You owe me $4,200. That voice had nothing in common with the trembling, crying victim who had spoken from the witness stand just minutes before. The contrast was so stark that an almost palpable shock ran through the jury rows. The jury retired to deliberate. The weight hung in the air, thick and viscous like tar. But to my surprise, it didn't last long, about 40 minutes. The door to the jury room opened, and the foreman spoke firmly and clearly. "Guilty." Abby burst into tears again, but this time her tears were different, not theatrical and demonstrative, but bitter and desperate, flowing from the very depths of the realization of the irreparable nature of what she had done. The judge looked at her without a trace of sympathy. "Miss Thompson, you are sentenced to 2 years probation. You will have a criminal record. As part of the civil judgment, you are ordered to pay $83,000 to Miss Smith in compensation for property damage, legal costs, and emotional distress." $83,000. I hadn't expected such a sum myself. Mr. Harris, as it turned out, had done meticulous calculations in advance, including not only the cost of restoration, but also all associated expenses and substantial punitive damages. Abby collapsed into her chair as if her legs had given way. Her lawyer was trying to say something to her, but she didn't hear, staring into emptiness. My mother was sobbing, her face buried in her hands, and my father had an expression as if he had been hit hard on the head. After the trial, they tried to approach me in the courthouse's marble corridor, but I walked past without granting them a word or a glance. In the following weeks, news reached me through various channels. Jacob's divorce was swift and final. He got full custody of both children. And Abby's criminal record was the decisive factor in his favor. To start paying off the huge debt, she had to sell her car, then her jewelry, furniture, anything of any value. For the remainder, she took out a humiliating loan. Her only refuge became the attic in our parents' house, converted into a semblance of a bedroom. My parents, trying to justify themselves in the eyes of others, told everyone that I was a cruel and heartless traitor. But in the tight-knit community of our town, rumors have a way of accumulating truth. People, willingly or not, learned the details. Court documents that became public, the contents of the surveillance videos, and public opinion, that fickle element, began to turn against them. Suddenly, my parents found they were no longer invited to dinner parties. Parishioners at church avoided sitting on the same pew with them, and old friends found polite excuses to disappear from their lives. They had supported a thief, and now they were reaping the bitter fruits of that choice. I, meanwhile, deleted all their contacts from my phone. Mom, Dad, Abby, all those relatives who had condemned me, I was done with all of them. A month after the trial ended, I could finally begin the repairs. I hired professionals who removed the horrible silver wallpaper, replacing it with calm and elegant ones. My sofa was carefully restored to its original cherished upholstery. The studio was repainted a soft cream color, all its wounds patched. The cheap wine rack in the kitchen was gone without a trace. When everything was finished, the house shone with a new strength, having become even more beautiful because it had been reclaimed and cleansed. I started coming here almost every weekend. Just me. I changed all the locks and installed new security codes. Now only I had the keys, the only person who would ever have them. Last week, a cousin who had supported me throughout this nightmare called. She informed me that Abby, to pay off the loan, was forced to work 3 jobs, one of which was a night shift at a supermarket, stocking shelves from midnight to 6 in the morning. The 6 months that passed after the trial were a time of quiet and methodical rebirth. My life, once distorted by betrayal, took on new, solid contours. The house at Lake Tahoe finally became what I had always dreamed of, a true sanctuary where harmony and peace reigned. I came here almost every weekend, and each visit was a ritual of healing. Sometimes I spent hours in the studio, immersed in the meditative process of painting, where the only law was the play of color and shadow. Sometimes I just sat on the terrace, wrapped in a soft blanket, and watched the wind draw intricate patterns on the leaden surface of the lake. The house was mine again, and this feeling of ownership, hard-won and reclaimed, was deeper and fuller than ever before. On the professional front, things were also going brilliantly. I was promoted to senior financial analyst. My boss noted my new unyielding focus and increased confidence in my decisions. I didn't confide in him about the family drama. I simply started working with the dedication and clarity they had never seen in me before. New friends appeared, too. Pleasant people, unburdened by a shared past, from a hiking group that gathered by the lake on weekends. On Saturdays, we went hiking together, and to them, I was just Kendra, a woman who loved nature and made terrible jokes about her own spreadsheet work. The first few months after the trial, my parents continued their attempts to reach me. My digital inboxes filled with long, convoluted letters about the sanctity of family bonds and the necessity of forgiveness. Voicemails came from my mother, her voice trembling with sobs, accusing me of destroying the family. Father left angry, reproachful messages, insisting I should be ashamed. I deleted everything without reading or listening. Over time, their onslaught dwindled, replaced by a deafening silence. My cousin, my only link to that world, occasionally shared news. Abby's situation was pitiful. She still lived in the parents' attic, torn between 3 jobs: the night shift at the supermarket, a daytime job at a diner, and weekends at a dry cleaner's. According to my cousin, she always looked haggard, and the loan payments consumed almost all of her meager earnings. Jacob, meanwhile, had started a new life, married a colleague, and their home, by all accounts, had become a true island of stability and happiness for the children. Abby was allowed supervised visits with the children every 2 weeks, and the criminal record had permanently barred her from any chance of full custody. My parents' social life had turned to dust. My mother, running into old friends at the local store, saw them hastily turn down another aisle. My father was asked to leave a committee he had been on for years. Their name had become synonymous with a bad reputation. I learned about this without a trace of guilt. They had made their choice. All my life they had chosen Abby, urging me to be the bigger person and to forgive. Well, I had been that bigger person for 34 years. I'd had enough. Now my house was beautiful, even better than before. I hired an interior designer and we reimagined the space together. The dining room now glowed with noble shades of elegant gray wallpaper. In the living room sat my restored sofa, surrounded by new armchairs that perfectly complemented it. In the kitchen, all the wounds were patched, and I installed a solid, stylish wine display. The studio upstairs, painted a soft cream, was equipped with professional lighting for painting. I also significantly upgraded the security system. More cameras, more reliable locks, a new alarm, not out of paranoia, but from a desire for an absolute, unshakable sense of security. It was my space, my sanctuary, and no one would ever encroach upon it again. Last month, running late into a supermarket near my Reno apartment for milk and bread, I ran into a ghost from my past in the cereal aisle. Abby, in a blue work vest, her hair carelessly tied back, was mechanically stocking shelves. She looked haggard, gray, much older than her 31 years. Her face bore the stamp of endless fatigue, the kind seen in those who work to exhaustion and barely know sleep. Our eyes met simultaneously, and we froze, as if in an old silent film where all the words had long been spoken. I thought for a moment that the familiar drama would begin. Screams, tears, accusations. But none of that happened. She just looked at me with an empty, faded gaze holding no malice, no despair, only a deep, bottomless weariness, and then slowly turned back to her cart and continued placing jars, as if I were just a mirage, a random obstacle in her nightly routine. I paid for my purchases and stepped out into the cool night air, trying to sort through the tangle of my own feelings, but found only silence and calm in their place. Pity? No. Guilt? None of that either. Schadenfreude? Something close, but not quite. More like a cold, indifferent acknowledgement of a settled fact. She had tried to take what was rightfully mine, confident in her impunity, as that strategy had always worked before, but this time she had miscalculated badly and was now reaping the bitter fruits of her arrogance. Sometimes my cousin, the last bridge connecting me to that world, cautiously asks if I ever think about the possibility of any reconciliation, to which I always give the same, measured and unchanging answer. They showed me who they really are, and I, after years of blindness, finally believed them. I have my house on the lake, filled with light and peace. I have a career in which I have succeeded as a professional. I have new, easy relationships with people unburdened by resentment and mutual claims. I have found precious peace of mind, and that is more than enough for me. People tend to speak of family with reverent awe, as if blood itself obligates endless forgiveness. But through this bitter experience, I learned a simple and clear truth. Family are those who respect you, support you, not those who shamelessly steal your property and expect you to sacrifice everything without complaint, while they only take, offering nothing in return. For 34 years, I was the convenient, accommodating, responsible version of myself. The one always ready to yield, forgive, and forget. That version is now in the past. Now I am simply Kendra, a woman with a beautiful house on the shore of Tahoe, a senior financial analyst, a hiking enthusiast with a terrible sense of humor, a person who has learned to set clear, firm boundaries and guard them. And I sleep more deeply and peacefully at night than ever before. Abby continued her existence in her parents' attic, torn between 3 jobs to pay off the debt born of her own greed and audacity. My parents led a life of isolation and loneliness, reaping the bitter fruits of their eternal choice in favor of the wrong daughter. And I was free. That is where the story ends. I feel not the slightest regret about contacting the lawyer or the criminal case or cutting all ties. Someone might consider me overly harsh and merciless, but such judgments usually come from those who have never spent their entire lives playing second fiddle in the shadow of a spoiled younger sister. I reclaimed everything that was rightfully mine: my home, my peace of mind, my self-respect. And I vowed to myself that I would never give it up again.